Welcome back everybody to the 22 Sam project. Today we're going to start really tearing into the bathroom, the remaining of the structure, the overhead, the wiring, the wall. As I go along through this, I start to find more and more things that have me concerned about the build of the bathroom itself. Starting with when we're working with this overhead, a lot of the wires here had been detached and weren't continuing on from these switches to anything else. They'd simply been stubbed out in the walls, and in two cases at least, the wires had just physically been pulled apart. The positive and the negative had been separated by several inches and not even taped. They were just left hanging in the overhead section. So they were still live, but just laying in the attic. Behind the green wall on this back section, I was, a little concerned about pulling some of that out because it appeared that there might be some holes in the wall, but it has to get repaired, so, today's the day to do it. And as I start to tear into some of the other things, especially along the bottom corners here, I start to find some pretty questionable workmanship, which is the first really sketchy things I have seen in this house. Almost everything up to this point had been done with a framing style in mind, and everything was going along the way they intended to be with a few small mistakes. But this is really letting me know the person who did the remodel in the bathroom didn't know what they were doing. That's the first real example I've seen in the house of insects other than a few spiders. But looks like we got a pretty doozy of an ant's nest going on here. All right. This is not your normal sheetrock. Nice. No, thank you. No.
I need to tell you the thing I find.
What will we find next?
Huh?
I said, what will we find next?
Just do that. Part of your video. What you finding in the yard? People will go, wow.
Yeah, I'll find an ant's nest. Or colonies, I should say.
Yeah.
Ooh, lots of big spiders. Wow.
Let's see. You still there? Did you kill it?
No, I missed them. They're probably eating the ants.
You don't think people should watch your video? You say, hey, here's the range and stuff. Hey, maybe you should do a metal video of the stuff you found in the yard.
Maybe.
That might be something people will watch. I mean, you know.
Okay. Rarely as you go into a project does the project ever go the way that you'd initially hoped it would or initially planned that it would. And I had set in originally a time budget and a project budget for this house. I think the financial budget is probably still largely unchanged from the amount of damage I was just expecting to find as I went through this. When I had walked through the house the first time that I looked at it, my first thought was, wow, for a house that had squatters in it, this is still in remarkably good shape. And to the most part, that's true. This house really hasn't had the severe destruction that a lot of other places that have had squatters had. Like, for example, they didn't rip the walls out. They didn't rip the plumbing, which is all copper. They didn't rip out the wiring and steal it. But at the same time, if you let a toilet overflow, dozens, hundreds of times onto the floor. If you let a shower leak into the surrounding area, if you let it damage the walls, damage the floor. No, you didn't tear out things directly, but you still did a lot of damage because water is just going to find its lowest possible point. And the more saturation that you have into flooring, even if you really try to protect it, you get biological contaminants, you get all kinds of greases, you get waters flowing into it, you get soaps and detergents that come from the shower that coat the plumbing, that coat the edges of the wood, they make them spongy and squishy. This section of the floor is actually much, much worse than I thought it was at this point. And as it goes along with this tear out, I continue to find that the person who put this back was really trying. They were doing their best to make this a livable space and a livable structure, but they really didn't know what they were doing. And either they didn't have the resources or the time to really do this right and to do the full tear out, which is what it really needed. So it's really satisfactory as you go along and do this. Really satisfying as you go along and do this to tear everything completely out and completely down. And originally I'd wanted to keep this wall. I'd wanted to keep the bathroom largely as it was set up because it was a decent layout, especially for a 60s design house. And I thought, well, when I walked in, I'm not going to have to do a whole lot to this house to make it just basically livable. And to some extent that would have been true depending on what your standards are for living in a house. But at the same time, the second you left the living room and started to walk anywhere else, you were walking downhill into kind of a valley, basically centered on the bathroom. And as I tear out more and more, we find that the damage is partly the reason why, but partly this remodel was done by somebody who just, their knowledge wasn't up to the task. Their abilities, while maybe rushed, maybe underserved by knowledge, maybe they only had a weekend to do it. I don't know what the reason was they did what they did. But as we'll find in some of the later videos, because I'm a little bit past this point now and trying to do catch up with the videos, whoever did this just... you don't build a valley in the middle of your bathroom floor. All right, well, we've got all this torn out now. We've got the ceiling section in here completely ripped out. Cleaning is continuing in the next room. Mom's doing a great job over there. Back of the bathroom is all torn out. We've got a good look at what we got for our ceiling here. So let's go look through and see if we got any broken, obviously broken rafters here. I see some with a pretty good bow to it. So I think I'm going to leave this wall intact at the moment. We're going to put a 2x6 across. We're going to get these jacked up a little bit, and then we're going to put new rafters in with a little bit less sag to them. These actually look pretty good. I'm also going to leave these rafters here, these ceiling joists here for the moment. And woo, that one's terrible. Look at that guy. Yeah, some secondary supports. So I'm going to get some measurements and see how long of pieces I need to run this. And I'll be back. Oh my, so many ants. That is all ants. That is not dirt. That is just ants. Gotta get some boric acid and give it a good spray down.
Over here.
No, this is a good stuff.
Okay, I just want to fall over and still everything has stuff up. I'm gonna go outside and grab my mask for a minute.
You're playing all my, so I'm
Alright.
We are now completely out of back up the insulation. Have to get some more. Come back on the next trip. Okay. Unfortunately, this has convinced me of something I really knew it already, but I didn't like the idea of it. We're just going to have to tear out the kitchen. The wiring's too old. The insulation is too poor quality. We're just going to have to do it. It's got to go. All right, continuing on. All right, well, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. We got a lot of ceilings torn down. I'm going to give you a short walkthrough and make it all in one piece and a little more comprehensive. So here's our pile that we took out from today of solids. We got our non-recoverable insulation, which is unfortunately in this case all of it, as we go through. So we have very high ceilings now, 2x6, which is very nice going across. So we're going to double these up, keep them 24 inches or 24 on center, as close as we can. I'm going to reframe part of this wall, tear this wall out, reframe it correctly. We've got some pretty wonky timber in here. Take this decking out still, bag up all this insulation. This might stay, not sure yet, might stay. Take out these once I get more reinforcement over here. And then take this up just like everything else. May have to redeck. Some of these boards are pretty dry rotted after 60 years up there in the heat. Bag up all the insulation in here, take out the decking in here, and then the next project, unfortunately, is going to have to be tearing out the kitchen. I had wanted to try and avoid that and wanted to try and preserve this, but the wiring and the insulation have convinced me otherwise. So unless something just radically changes when I go underneath the house and look around, that's just what we've got. So I want to say thank you to everyone for watching and following along, and I'll see you guys on the next one.